Beneath the thin veneer of our modern cities, beneath the soil of our farmlands and the sands of our deserts, lies a silent, sleeping world. It is a world measured not in years, but in epochs, a world of forgotten empires, impossible structures, and profound, unanswered questions. Every layer of rock, every stratum of earth is a page in a chronicle written in dust and stone, a history of our planet and of ourselves, with entire chapters torn out, lost to the relentless march of time. We have spent centuries piecing together this story. We have meticulously unearthed fragments of pottery, translated the edicts of kings, and charted the slow, steady rise of humanity. The official narrative is a familiar one. It speaks of a linear progression, a logical climb from hunter-gatherers huddled around a fire to the first farmers tilling the soil, to the birth of writing and law in the Fertile Crescent of Mesopotamia. It tells us that civilization as we know it is a recent invention, a flickering candle ignited only 6,000 years ago against an immense backdrop of primitive darkness. It is a neat, orderly, and comforting story. But it is a story that is beginning to crumble. Because scattered across the globe, there are whispers of something else, anomalies, glitches in the accepted timeline. Deep within the earth, and sometimes hidden in plain sight, we find legacies that defy this simple narrative. We find megalithic structures weighing hundreds of tons, engineered with a precision that would challenge our own technology, supposedly erected by people who had not yet invented the wheel. We find sophisticated astronomical alignments and complex mathematics encoded in the architecture of cultures that were meant to be simple. These are not mere curiosities. They are profound challenges to everything we think we know. How do we explain a 12,000-year-old temple built with astonishing skill, appearing thousands of years before the first cities were said to exist? What are we to make of colossal subterranean complexes, capable of housing tens of thousands, carved from solid rock with no historical record of their construction? Who were the builders? Where did their knowledge come from? And more importantly, where did it go? Mainstream archaeology often labels these as isolated mysteries, the work of unique, localized cultures that briefly shone before fading. They are footnotes in the grand text of history, intriguing, but ultimately insignificant. But what if they aren't footnotes? What if they are the last surviving paragraphs of a lost prequel? The fragmented echoes of a human story, far older, far more advanced, and far more dramatic than we have ever been told? What if the great flood myths, whispered in over 200 cultures across the planet, are not myths at all, but a collective, fractured memory of a global cataclysm that wiped the slate clean? A planetary reset that plunged a sophisticated globe-spanning civilization into a dark age, leaving behind only these enigmatic ruins as ghosts of their former glory. This is not a search for answers that are easily found. It is an exploration of the questions that have been deemed too uncomfortable to ask. It is a journey into the abyss of our own forgotten past. We will sift through the dust of millennia, listen to the whispers encoded in stone, and dare to look at the evidence that lies just beyond the edges of accepted history. We will investigate the world that sleeps beneath our own, to unearth the secrets that our history books dare not write. The journey will take us deep into the earth, to the sites of impossible engineering and inexplicable knowledge. We will peel back the layers of dogma and assumption,
and confront the chilling possibility that our civilization is not the pinnacle of human achievement, but perhaps only the latest. We are a species with amnesia, living amongst the ruins of a past we can no longer remember, yet cannot escape. So we must begin by asking the most fundamental question of all. What if the established timeline of our past is wrong? What if the civilizations we have found, Sumer, Egypt, the Indus Valley, are not the beginning of the story, but are themselves the inheritors of a much older, fallen world? What if they are merely the tip of an immense, submerged iceberg, hiding a human history so vast and so ancient that it could rewrite our very identity as a species? To begin this journey, we must travel to a place that, according to our own history books, should not exist. A place that single-handedly pushes back the dawn of civilization by millennia and confronts us with the staggering genius of our most distant ancestors.
In the sun-scorched plains of southeastern Anatolia, near the modern Turkish city of Şanlıurfa, lies a hill that for millennia was considered utterly unremarkable. Local farmers call it GÖBEKLI TEPE, the Potbelly Hill. For generations, they moved their flocks across its gentle slope, occasionally turning up strange carved stones in their fields, dismissing them as nothing more than medieval grave markers, remnants of the long-forgotten cemetery. But one man, the late German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt, saw something else. In 1994, standing atop that hill, he felt a presence, an echo of an intelligence so profound and so ancient it had been entirely erased from the memory of humankind. He looked at the fragments of worked flint and limestone littering the ground, and he recognized them not as the debris of a simple graveyard, but as the fingerprints of a monumental Neolithic undertaking. He knew, with a certainty that would redefine his life's work, that something extraordinary was sleeping just beneath the soil. He was right, but not even he could have prepared himself for the scale of what lay buried. What Schmidt and his team unearthed did more than just challenge the timeline of human history. It obliterated it. Beneath the Potbelly Hill was not a village, not a settlement, but a breathtaking complex of megalithic stone circles. Enclosure after enclosure emerged from the earth, each one dominated by enormous T-shaped pillars of limestone standing in silent assembly. The largest of these monoliths weigh over 50 tons and stand nearly 20 feet tall, their surfaces alive with exquisite, high-relief carvings of terrifying predators and enigmatic symbols: scorpions, wild boars, vultures, and headless men. Geomagnetic surveys have revealed that at least 20 of these stone circles lie waiting beneath the hill, a vast subterranean cathedral of stone. And the most staggering fact of all, the part that unraveled everything we thought we knew, was its age. Through radiocarbon dating of organic material found in the fill, Göbekli Tepe was dated to roughly 9600 BC. Let that number settle in. 12,000 years old. This is a structure built 7,000 years before the Great Pyramid of Giza. It is 6,000 years older than Stonehenge. It predates the invention of pottery, the invention of writing, the invention of the wheel, and the domestication of animals. It is a masterpiece of megalithic architecture from a time when, according to our history books, humanity was supposed to be living in scattered, nomadic bands of primitive hunter-gatherers, armed with little more than flint-tipped spears and stone tools. The mainstream archaeological community was forced into a radical and complete revision of the human story. The prevailing theory for centuries was that complex religion and monumental architecture were a product of civilization. First came agriculture, which allowed humans to settle down. This led to villages, then cities, then complex social hierarchies,
And only then, with a surplus of time and resources, did humanity turn its attention to building massive temples for the gods. Göbekli Tepe flips that entire narrative on its head. The accepted academic view is now that the opposite happened. This was the world's first temple, a sacred pilgrimage site for the various hunter-gatherer clans of the Fertile Crescent. The sheer logistical challenge of building something on this scale, the argument goes, is what forced humanity to innovate. The need to organize a massive, non-resident workforce required new social structures. The need to feed those hundreds of workers for decades or even centuries spurred the cultivation of wild grasses, the very birth of agriculture. In this new telling of our story, it was the quest for the sacred that created civilization. The temple came first. It is a neat, compelling theory, a revolutionary idea that reshapes our understanding of the Neolithic mind. And it would be the final word on the matter, if not for a cascade of deeply unsettling questions that the theory simply cannot answer. Questions that hint at a much deeper, much stranger story.
The first and most glaring problem is one of logistics. The hunter-gatherer model is defined by small, mobile groups. How did these disparate, non-literate clans communicate and coordinate a construction project of this magnitude? Quarrying, meticulously shaping, and then moving 50-ton blocks of limestone for hundreds of yards, mostly uphill, from the surrounding valleys, is a feat that would challenge modern engineers. To do so with nothing but stone, wood, and rope requires a level of organizational sophistication and a centralized authority that simply should not exist in a pre-agricultural society. Who was in charge? Who designed the complex blueprints, which were clearly followed over centuries of construction? Who managed the food and water supply for a massive, stationary workforce that wasn't yet growing its own food? The sheer number of calories required is astronomical. The archaeological record shows the builders feasted on wild game like gazelle and aurochs, but hunting on that scale to feed a permanent city of workers is simply not sustainable. It presents a paradox. The project required a food surplus that could only be provided by the very agriculture it was supposedly invented to support. Then there is the art. The carvings at Göbekli Tepe are not the crude etchings of a nascent culture. They are sophisticated, stylized, and deeply symbolic. These aren't just pictures of animals they hunted, they are powerful icons woven into a complex mythological tapestry. One pillar, number 43, known as the Vulture Stone, is particularly chilling. It depicts a headless human figure alongside a vulture, a scorpion, and other symbols. Some researchers, charting the positions of these animals, have made a startling claim that the carvings are not animals at all, but constellations: Sagittarius, Scorpius, Libra. They argue the pillar is an astronomical map, a celestial timestamp. And the date it seems to mark is circa 10,950 BC, a date which coincides precisely with the onset of the Younger Dryas, a catastrophic period of abrupt global climate change, often linked by alternative researchers to a comet impact event. Is the Vulture Stone a memorial, a detailed record of a sky-altering cataclysm that wiped out a previous world passed down through generations? The level of astronomical knowledge required to create such a map is utterly at odds with the image of a primitive hunter-gatherer. This deep disconnect between the supposed builders and the structure itself has led to more speculative but powerfully compelling alternative theories. One school of thought posits that the hunter-gatherers of Anatolia were not the architects of Göbekli Tepe, but merely its inheritors, or perhaps its students. Could it be that Göbekli Tepe is the work of a surviving remnant of a much older, much more advanced civilization that has been lost to time? a culture that possessed the engineering, astronomical, and organizational knowledge we see encoded in the stones, and who, after a global cataclysm, like the one possibly depicted on the Vulture Stone, attempted to pass on their knowledge to the shell-shocked survivors of a new, darker age. In this view, Göbekli Tepe is not the dawn of civilization, but the fading twilight of one that came before. It is a desperate attempt to build a library in stone, a center for restarting a world that had been thrown back into the dark. This theory gains traction when you consider the most profound mystery of all, its ending. After 1,500 years of use, the creators of Göbekli Tepe did something inexplicable. They did not simply abandon their sacred temple, they went to the immense trouble of deliberately and painstakingly burying it. Ton by ton, over centuries, they filled every circle with millions of cubic feet of earth, rubble, and animal bones, entombing their creation perfectly, preserving it like a time capsule for a distant future.
Why? Why would a culture invest so much effort into burying their most sacred accomplishment? Mainstream archaeology suggests it was part of a ritual cycle of death and rebirth. But the act feels more final, more protective. Were they hiding it? Were they protecting its sacred knowledge from being forgotten or from being misused? Was it an act of piety or an act of fear? It is an act without precedent in the entire archaeological record. They built the impossible, and then they made it vanish. The discovery of Göbekli Tepe proves beyond any doubt that a vast and critical chapter of the human story is missing. The neat linear progression from primitive cave dweller to sophisticated city builder is a fiction. Here, in these stones, is evidence of a sudden, inexplicable leap in human capability 12,000 years ago. Whether this leap came from within, as the mainstream suggests, or was a legacy handed down from a ghost civilization, as others propose, the conclusion is the same. We are a species with amnesia. The stones of Göbekli Tepe are just beginning to speak, and they are telling us that our history is not what we think it is. They are a silent testament to a forgotten epoch of genius and catastrophe. The people who built this place deliberately buried their world of stone, preserving its secrets for millennia. But they were not the only ones. Across the ancient world, as we will soon see, other civilizations chose to disappear, not by building magnificent structures towards the sky, but by descending deep into the earth itself, carving out entire empires from the living rock below. The great question that echoes from the halls of Göbekli Tepe is the same one that will lead us into our next great mystery. What exactly were they all hiding from?
In the heart of Anatolia, the earth has sculpted a landscape from a dream. A place of strange, conical towers and honeycombed cliffs. They call them fairy chimneys. For centuries, this region of Cappadocia has been a storybook vista, a surface world of impossible beauty. But the true wonder of this place, the greatest secret it holds, does not reach for the sky. It plunges into the silent, eternal darkness below. Beneath the quiet streets of a modern town lies a void, a hollowed-out empire. In 1963, a local resident renovating his home knocked down a basement wall and discovered not a cellar, but a passageway, a dark throat leading down into the unknown. What he had stumbled upon was not a cave, nor a simple tomb, but the entrance to a subterranean metropolis, a city of shadow, known as Derinkuyu. To descend into Derinkuyu is to leave the world behind. The air grows cool and still, carrying the scent of ancient dust and cold stone. Narrow, sloping corridors, barely wide enough for one person, suddenly open into vast chambers, rooms for living, for worship, for work. The first level gives way to a second, then a third, and still the city plunges deeper. 4 levels, 18 recorded stories descending over 280 feet into the earth. It is a geological labyrinth, a silent metropolis designed to support as many as 20,000 people, complete with their livestock and food supplies. Stables, wineries, oil presses, refectories, chapels, an entire civilization replicated in the dark. Ventilation shafts, some stretching nearly 200 feet, serve as umbilical cords to the sunlit world, providing air to the city's deepest recesses. This was not a temporary shelter. This was a world unto itself. The accepted historical narrative tells the story of refuge. Mainstream archaeology and history suggest that the city was likely started by the Phrygians, an Indo-European people, around the 8th century BCE. They carved the first few levels from the soft volcanic tuff, a rock uniquely suited for such an undertaking. The story continues that centuries later, the region's early Christian population expanded the city exponentially. During the era of Roman persecution, and later during the Arab-Byzantine Wars between the 8th and 12th centuries CE, Derinkuyu became their sanctuary. It was a sprawling, fortified bunker where a community could hide from invading armies, safe from sword and fire.
The evidence for this seems compelling. Chapels with Christian iconography are carved into the deeper levels, and the defensive systems are ingenious, most notably the colossal rolling stone doors. These massive millstone-shaped portals, weighing up to 1,000 pounds each, could be rolled into place from the inside, sealing off corridors and trapping invaders in the maze. From this perspective, Derinkuyu is an incredible feat of defensive engineering, a testament to the will to survive in a hostile world. It is a neat, tidy explanation that satisfies our understanding of history. But the deeper you go, the more the stone itself begins to whisper of older, stranger truths. The tidy explanation begins to unravel. The first and most staggering anomaly is the sheer scale of the project. We are asked to believe that groups of refugees fleeing for their lives with limited resources and tools organized and executed one of the most ambitious construction projects of the ancient world. The city is estimated to contain over 2 million square feet of space. To create it, millions of tons of rock had to be excavated. Yet there are no significant spoil heaps on the surface. Where did all the rock go? The logistics of its removal and disposal without leaving a trace for invading armies to spot is a profound mystery in itself. Furthermore, was this level of construction even necessary to hide from Roman legions or Arab raiders? Armies move on, sieges end. A threat from another human army is almost always temporary. But Derinkuyu feels permanent. Its vast food cellars, its extensive stables for livestock, its own internal water wells that couldn't be poisoned from the surface. This all points to a design intended for long-term, multi-generational survival. It suggests a population preparing to remain underground not for weeks or months, but for years, perhaps forever. Then there is the question of its origin. Attributing the initial construction to the Phrygians is a theory, based on a few artifacts. But the Hittites occupied this region more than 1,000 years before them. Could they have been the original architects? Or were even the Hittites simply discovering and occupying a structure that was ancient even to them? The rock itself cannot be carbon dated, only the artifacts left behind. The city's true age remains an open question. The most unsettling anomaly, however, lies in its fundamental design. Those massive stone doors, they seal exclusively from the inside. The ventilation shafts, so brilliantly engineered, could have been a fatal flaw, a direct route for an enemy to pour down fire, smoke, or poison. The entire city could be sealed, but it could also become a tomb. This raises a chilling possibility. What if the primary threat wasn't human at all? What if the builders of Derinkuyu were not hiding from other people on the surface, but from the surface itself?
When we look beyond the confines of conventional history, other, more dramatic theories emerge. One theory posits that Derinkuyu was a cataclysm shelter. Its builders may have been the survivors of a terrible global event, the devastating aftermath of a comet impact, a period of intense solar flare activity that scorched the Earth, or a prolonged volcanic winter that blotted out the sun. In such a scenario, the surface world would have become uninhabitable. The air itself would be poison, the sky a source of terror. The only path to survival would be to go down, to seal oneself away from the world and wait for the planet to heal. This idea resonates with ancient myths from around the globe, tales of a great flood, a long winter, or a time of darkness, when humanity survived only by seeking refuge. The ancient Zoroastrian text, the Vendidad, speaks of a great king named Yima who was instructed to build a vara, a massive multi-level underground enclosure to protect the finest of humanity, animals, and plants from a fatal winter. The description of the vara bears an uncanny resemblance to Derinkuyu. And we must remember, Derinkuyu is not alone. It is simply the largest and most famous of over 200 similar underground cities discovered in Cappadocia. This was not the work of a single isolated community. It was a regional response. An entire civilization, for reasons we do not fully understand, committed itself to the monumental task of carving out a second empire beneath the first. This points to a shared ancient knowledge and a shared ancient fear, a fear so profound it drove them to abandon the light. When we see this pattern, this instinct to dig, we see echoes in other mysterious subterranean structures across the planet. We are forced to consider a lost chapter of the human story, a time when our ancestors were not masters of the earth, but fugitives seeking shelter within it. So we are left in the silent, cool darkness of Derinkuyu with a profound and unsettling question. Who were the original architects of this impossible city? And what terrifying, world-ending threat could have possibly driven an entire civilization to divorce itself from the sun, the moon, and the sky? The city's existence suggests that at some point in our distant past, our ancestors faced a terror so great they chose to seal themselves inside the earth. It speaks of a memory, a trauma written into the very stone of our world, a warning that the greatest dangers may not come from across the battlefield, but from the silent, unforgiving cosmos above. And if a threat of that magnitude happened once, what is to stop it from happening again?
In the verdant, rolling hills of China's Zhejiang province, near the village of Xianbei, the Ku River flows as it has for millennia. For generations, the locals spoke of the deep, rectangular ponds that dotted their landscape. They called them the bottomless ponds, pools of dark, still water, so deep that they were considered a local curiosity, a natural anomaly. They were used for washing, for fishing, and were woven into the simple tapestry of village life, a feature of the land unremarkable in its familiarity. But in June of 1992, one villager, a man named Wu Anai, decided to act on a simple yet profound curiosity. He wondered, what if the ponds weren't bottomless at all? What if they held a secret? He gathered his neighbors, and together they purchased a powerful water pump. Their goal was simple: to drain one of the ponds and see what lay beneath. For 17 days and 17 nights, the pump roared, pulling an endless torrent of water from the earth. The villagers watched,
their curiosity growing with each passing day as the water level slowly, painstakingly receded. And then, something impossible began to emerge. Not the muddy, sloping basin of a natural pond, but the sharp, geometric lines of something man-made. The water gave way to reveal a dark opening, the entrance to a cavern of breathtaking scale. When the last of the water was gone, Wu Anai and the villagers stood at the precipice of a secret that had slept in silence for thousands of years. They had not drained a pond, they had emptied a lost cathedral of solid rock. This was the first of the Longyu grottos. What they had uncovered was not a single cavern, but a vast subterranean complex. To date, 24 grottos have been discovered, with some experts believing more than 50 may exist, all carved from the native siltstone with an inexplicable precision. The scale is staggering. The average floor area of each grotto is over 1,000 square meters, with ceilings soaring to heights of 30 meters. They are monumental, immense. Stepping inside is like entering another world, a silent labyrinth untouched by time. Monolithic pillars of rock, elegantly carved, rise from the floor to support the ceiling. The walls and ceilings are not rough-hewn stone. They are covered from top to bottom in a series of uniform, parallel tool marks, a decorative yet functional pattern left by the ancient builders. The craftsmanship is breathtaking. The atmosphere is one of profound and unnerving silence. When Chinese authorities and archaeologists descended upon the site, they were confronted with a puzzle that defied all conventional explanation. The first order of business was to calculate the sheer volume of the excavation. Based on the discovered grottos, it's estimated that at least 1 million cubic meters of solid rock were painstakingly chipped away and removed. To put that into perspective, that is a volume of stone roughly equivalent to 1/3 of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Mainstream archaeology tells us this would have required a massive, coordinated labor force, working diligently for centuries with simple iron chisels and hammers. The logistics of such an undertaking are mind-boggling. The manpower, the food and housing for the workers, the organizational structure required to manage such a colossal project. The accepted historical record, the official timeline of Chinese dynasties and their incredible engineering feats, is one of the most comprehensive and detailed in the world. Scholars have access to thousands of years of imperial records, local gazetteers, philosophical texts, and poetry. Every great project, from the Great Wall to the Grand Canal, is meticulously documented. The names of the emperors who commissioned them, the generals who oversaw them, the cost, the labor force, it is all recorded.
And so, the academic world turned to these extensive archives, confident that the answer to the Longyu grottos lay somewhere within their pages. They searched for any mention of a massive quarrying project, a hidden palace, a secret military installation, or an imperial tomb in the vicinity of the Kwa River. They searched, and they found nothing. Absolutely nothing. Not a single word, not a passing mention in a local folk tale, not a whisper in the dynastic histories. And this is where the mystery deepens, transforming from a question of engineering into a profound historical anomaly. This is the but moment that leaves scholars grasping for answers. How could a project of this magnitude, a project that would have undoubtedly been one of the most ambitious undertakings of its time, vanish from history? This isn't just an oversight, it is a historical impossibility. The complete and total absence of any written record is perhaps the single most baffling aspect of the Longyu grottos. It is as if the project and the civilization that built it never existed. But the anomalies only multiply the deeper you look. Consider the engineering.
The walls of the grottos are remarkably thin, in some places only 50 centimeters thick, yet they have remained structurally sound for millennia, surviving countless floods and seismic events. The monolithic stone pillars are distributed with an almost intuitive perfection, providing maximum support. The entire interior of every grotto is covered in the same distinctive pattern, parallel, chiseled lines running at a uniform 60-degree angle. What tool could produce such a vast and consistent finish? The marks suggest a unified, methodical approach, almost as if a single, unknown technology was employed throughout the entire complex. Then there is the question of the excavated rock. 1 million cubic meters of siltstone is not an amount that simply disappears. Yet there is no evidence of it nearby. No great mounds of spoil, no surrounding structures or walls built from the removed material. It was simply gone. Furthermore, the grottos are eerily sterile. In a project that would have taken thousands of workers centuries to complete, one would expect to find evidence of their presence. Broken tools, skeletal remains of workers who perished, pottery, or at the very least the soot and scorch marks from the torches that would have been necessary to light the suffocating darkness. Yet nothing was found. No artifacts, no bones, no fire damage. It's as if the grottos were carved in pristine condition and then immediately, deliberately filled with water, sealing them away from the world. In the face of this profound silence from history, we are left only with theories, each more speculative than the last. The most straightforward explanation is that the grottos were simply a quarry for sourcing building materials. This is the safest, most conventional theory, but it explains almost nothing. Why quarry underground in such an elaborate and dangerous manner when open pit mining is far easier? Why decorate the interior with such artistic, uniform chisel marks if it was merely a hole in the ground? This theory crumbles under the weight of the site's sheer artistry and precision. Another theory posits that the grottos were a secret palace or tomb for an unknown emperor. This would account for the grand scale and the potential secrecy. Perhaps an emperor wished to build a hidden afterlife sanctuary. But this theory is also inconsistent with the evidence. Tombs and palaces of that era were filled with inscriptions, murals, treasures, and funerary objects meant to honor the deceased and tell their story. The Longyou grottos are barren. They are empty voids, devoid of any identity or purpose. Could they have been a secret military base? A place to hide an army or hoard supplies away from prying eyes? The secrecy fits, but the design does not. The delicate, thin walls and soaring cathedral-like ceilings seem ill-suited for the brutalities of military use. The artistic finish seems entirely superfluous for a functional bunker. It is an answer that raises more questions than it solves. This leads us to more esoteric possibilities. Perhaps the grottos were a place of religious ritual, a massive subterranean temple complex for a forgotten faith. The atmosphere inside certainly feels sacred, awe-inspiring, and reverent. But again, what religion? There are no altars, no idols, no iconography to give us a clue. The only carvings discovered are a few simple, enigmatic reliefs of a horse, a fish, and a bird. Symbols so universal, they offer no specific insight. It was a temple with no gods, a church with no icons, a sacred space dedicated to emptiness. The sheer strangeness of the Longyou grottos forces us to consider a more radical possibility. Perhaps we are not looking at the work of a known dynasty. Perhaps we are looking at the fingerprint of a civilization entirely missing from our history books. A civilization with a unique understanding of geology, engineering, and perhaps even a technology for stonework that we have yet to rediscover. The uniformity of the tool marks, the precision of the construction, the sheer scale of the vision, these elements hint at a culture that was not primitive, but highly advanced in its own right. The historical amnesia surrounding Longyu is what is truly profound. It suggests that our understanding of the past is not a continuous line, but a series of fragments with entire chapters torn out. Civilizations, it seems, can rise, create wonders that should echo through eternity, and then vanish so completely that they don't even leave a myth behind. The grottos are a monument to this silence. They are a physical testament to a massive void in our knowledge. They stand as a stark reminder that history is not just the story of what we have found, but also the story of what remains lost. The earth beneath our feet is not a solid foundation of known facts, but a honeycomb of forgotten chambers and lost worlds. The Longyu grottos are not just a mystery of engineering, they are a mystery of intent. A silent, subterranean question mark carved on a scale that defies belief. And as we contemplate this impossible silent labyrinth, we must confront a disturbing thought. If a project of this magnitude, requiring centuries of labor and leaving behind 1 million cubic meters of evidence, could be so utterly erased from human memory? What else have we forgotten? What other silent wonders lie sleeping in the dark, waiting for a single curious mind to simply start pumping out the water?
In the very heart of Bosnia and Herzegovina, near the quiet town of Visoko, the landscape rises and falls in a series of gentle green hills. For centuries, they were simply part of the scenery. Unremarkable features of the Balkan terrain covered in trees and soil, silent witnesses to the turbulent history of the lands around them. But within the last 2 decades, these hills have become the epicenter of one of the most polarizing and electrifying debates in modern archaeology. Because beneath the placid green slopes of what some now call the Bosnian Valley of the Pyramids lies a secret, a world hidden from the sun. We are not at the base of a grand pyramid, but at a humble, unassuming entrance cut into a hillside a few kilometers away. This is the entrance to the Ravne tunnels. The air changes instantly as you step inside. The warmth of the European sun gives way to a profound and stable coolness, a subterranean stillness that feels ancient. The air is heavy with the scent of damp earth and minerals, yet it is shockingly fresh, clean, and easy to breathe. This is the first of many paradoxes you encounter in the labyrinth of Ravne. The passages stretch before you into the darkness, a network of tunnels carved through a dense, earthy conglomerate. As you venture deeper, the sense of disorientation grows. Tunnels branch off, some leading to dead ends, others opening into small chambers. The path twists and turns, not in the random, chaotic way of a natural cave system, but with a strange, almost intuitive geometry. You are walking through a mystery, a subterranean maze that some believe is over 30,000 years old. The mainstream scientific and archaeological consensus is, to put it mildly, skeptical. The official position is clear and unwavering. The Bosnian pyramids are not pyramids at all. They are natural geological formations known as flatirons, common topographical features in this region sculpted by the forces of erosion over millions of years. The notion of a man-made pyramid complex in Europe, older than the civilizations of Egypt and Sumer, is dismissed as pseudoscience, a grand and misleading fantasy. And the Ravne tunnels? According to this established view, the network is likely the remnant of a medieval mining operation. The conglomerate rock in the area is known to contain traces of gold, and it's plausible that miners from centuries past carved this network in search of a profitable vein. Other geologists have suggested the tunnels are a pseudo-karst system, a natural phenomenon where water has slowly eroded pathways through the soft conglomerate rock, creating a cave-like network without human intervention. The dry stone walls found blocking certain passages
are explained away as shoring, put in place by miners to prevent collapse. The artifacts found within are considered coincidental, either washed in over time or belonging to much later periods.
In 2006, the European Association of Archaeologists issued a formal declaration condemning the Bosnian pyramid claims as a cruel hoax on an unsuspecting public that has no place in the world of genuine science. To the academic world, the case is closed. The hills are hills, the tunnels are caves or old mines, and the story ends there. It is a neat, tidy explanation that fits comfortably within the known parameters of European history. But it is here, deep within the Earth, that the tidy explanation begins to unravel. It is here that the anomalies begin to pile up, one after another, until they form a weight of evidence that is difficult to dismiss. The but moment in the Ravne story is not a single point of contention, but a cascade of questions that the mainstream view struggles to answer. Let's begin with the layout. If this was a mine, it would follow a vein of ore. The tunnels would be logical in their pursuit of a resource. But they are not. They form a deliberate labyrinth, with intersections often meeting at sharp, near-perfect angles. And most critically, the original tunnels were carved before the last ice age. Analysis of the stalagmites and stalactites that have grown on top of the tunnel floor and ceiling indicates an age far exceeding any known medieval mining operations in the area. This isn't a mine from the 14th century. It's something else entirely. Then there are the walls. Throughout the network, dozens of side tunnels have been meticulously sealed off. They are not crudely blocked by rubble as one would expect in a collapsed mine. They're sealed with carefully constructed dry stone walls built from quarried stone slabs. Behind these walls is a different kind of fill material, a loosely packed conglomerate that is geologically distinct from the surrounding bedrock. This means that someone, at some point in the distant past, brought tons of material into the tunnels for the express purpose of sealing them. The question is not just who did this, but why? What were they sealing in? Or what were they sealing out? Perhaps the most startling discovery within the Ravne labyrinth is the megaliths. As excavation teams cleared the fill material from the tunnels, they began to uncover massive, sculpted ceramic objects. These are not small artifacts. Megalith K1, for instance, weighs an estimated 4 tons. Megalith K2 weighs nearly 8 tons. They're smooth, have distinct shapes, and are made from a type of geopolymer ceramic that, when analyzed, was found to have been fired at extremely high temperatures. They sit in small chambers, almost like guardians or focal points within the network. Some of them, like the famous egg-shaped monolith, are covered in a series of carved symbols, lines, and patterns that have been compared to ancient European runes, but predate them by millennia. Mainstream archaeology has no explanation for these objects. They simply should not be here. And then there is the unseen. A team of independent physicists and electrical engineers has spent years documenting the unique energy environment within the tunnels. The concentration of negative ions, molecules known to have a positive effect on health and well-being, is consistently measured at levels 10 to 40 times higher than in the open air outside. This creates an atmosphere that visitors describe as calming, healing, and revitalizing. Furthermore, researchers have detected a continuous low-frequency electromagnetic field of 28 kilohertz throughout the tunnels, a signal that appears to originate from the very tip of the Pyramid of the Sun above. Measurements of the Schumann resonance, the Earth's natural frequency, are also found to be exceptionally stable and powerful within the labyrinth. Natural caves and old mines do not produce calibrated energy fields. They do not have engineered ventilation systems that keep air fresh kilometers underground. They do not contain multi-ton ceramic sculptures covered in unknown proto-script. The mainstream explanation begins to feel less like a scientific conclusion and more like an uncomfortable denial of inexplicable data.
Faced with these anomalies, we must consider the alternative theories. The primary hypothesis, championed by the site's discoverer, Dr. Simir Osmanagic, is that the Ravne tunnels are an integral component of a vast, ancient, and highly advanced pyramid complex. In this view, the entire valley was reshaped by a civilization that understood physics, energy, and geology on a level we are only just beginning to appreciate. According to this theory, the tunnels were never meant for habitation, mining, or burial. They were part of a sophisticated energy machine. The pyramid structures acted as amplifiers, drawing in and refining natural telluric energies from the Earth and cosmic energies from space. The tunnels then served as a distribution network, a place of healing, rejuvenation, and heightened spiritual consciousness. The high concentration of negative ions wasn't a coincidence. It was an engineered feature designed to purify the air and promote biological regeneration. The water that flows from springs within the tunnels has been tested and shown to be remarkably pure, free of any harmful bacteria or microbes, leading to claims that it is living water, structured by the complex's energy field. The megaliths in this interpretation are not art objects. They are functional devices. They could be energy stabilizers, resonators, or capacitors, placed at specific nodes within the labyrinth to regulate the flow of energy. The symbols carved upon them might not be language in the way we understand it, but rather a form of energetic signature or a circuit diagram for a technology we no longer recognize. The sealing of the tunnels, which occurred around 5,000 years ago, was a deliberate act by a later culture, or perhaps the original builders themselves, to decommission the system and preserve it for a future time when humanity would be ready to understand it once more. If there is even a sliver of truth to this hypothesis, the implications are staggering. It would mean that a highly sophisticated civilization flourished in the heart of Europe during the last ice age, a civilization that possessed a profound understanding of quantum physics and bioenergetics, a lost science that is completely alien to our own technological path. It would place the origins of advanced human culture tens of thousands of years earlier than the history books allow, and it would place it not in Mesopotamia or Egypt, but in the Balkans. This concept of an ancient global culture with a mastery of Earth energies is not unique to Bosnia. We hear echoes of it in the legends of ley lines in Britain, the acoustic resonance of chambers within the Great Pyramid of Giza, and the precise celestial alignments of megalithic structures across the globe. Could the Ravne complex be the most well-preserved and functional example of this lost global system? Is it possible that what we are seeing in Visoko is not an isolated anomaly, but a critical missing piece of our own human story, a link to a forgotten parent civilization whose legacy is scattered across the planet, waiting to be rediscovered? We are left standing at a crossroads of belief. On one path lies the comfort of established history. These aren't natural hills and simple mines, a story of geology and modest human endeavor. On the other path lies a chasm of possibility, an ancient energy machine, a prehistoric super-civilization, and a complete rewriting of who we are and where we come from. The Earth at Visoko holds its secrets tightly. The debate between mainstream science and the alternative researchers rages on, but the tunnels themselves remain silent, offering up their anomalies without commentary. What was the true purpose of this incredible subterranean network?
What knowledge was so important that it had to be carved into the very bones of the earth? And why was it later so carefully sealed away from the world? Perhaps the most profound question is not about the past, but the present. Does the subtle energy that still flows through these ancient passageways hold a key, not just to a lost history, but to a forgotten aspect of human potential? The secrets of the Ravne tunnels may lie in the very earth from which they were carved, but they are not the only artifacts that defy explanation. Across the world, in the war-torn highlands of Southeast Asia, another mystery lies scattered in plain sight, a field of silent stone sentinels guarding a story we have yet to comprehend.
In the highlands of northern Laos lies a place of haunting beauty and profound mystery. This is the Chiang Kuang Plateau, a landscape of rolling green hills and serene valleys that has borne witness to more than its share of history. But this tranquil beauty is deceptive, for the land itself is deeply scarred. The plateau is one of the most heavily bombed places on Earth, a legacy of a secret war waged decades ago. The ground is pockmarked with tens of thousands of bomb craters, a constant and dangerous reminder of modern conflict. And yet, scattered across this very same landscape, standing in silent defiance of the passage of time and the violence of men, is a mystery far older and more enigmatic than any war. This is the Plain of Jars. Across more than 100 different sites, thousands of colossal stone jars lie in clusters, like the scattered belongings of a forgotten giant. Some are modest in size, while others are truly monolithic, standing over 3 meters tall and weighing upwards of 14 tons. They are carved from solid rock, their weathered surfaces telling a story of millennia spent enduring sun and monsoon rains. They stand in silent congregation, some upright and proud, others tilted as if in slumber, some shattered by the forces of time or war. There are no temples here, no palaces, no inscriptions to read. There is only the grass, the sky, and the jars, a silent, sprawling enigma that asks one of the most fundamental questions in archaeology: why? For nearly a century, archaeologists have been working to answer that question. The prevailing academic theory, backed by decades of research, is that the Plain of Jars is a vast, prehistoric burial ground. The creators are believed to be a sophisticated Iron Age civilization that flourished in this region between 500 BC and 500 AD. This culture, which left behind no written records, is known to us almost exclusively through these enigmatic stone vessels. The first major excavations, led by French archaeologist Madeleine Colony in the 1930s, uncovered evidence that supported this funerary hypothesis. Around the giant stone jars, she found human bones and teeth, many of them burned, buried in the earth. She also found pottery, iron tools, and glass beads, suggesting a complex society with established trade routes. More recent archaeological work, using modern techniques, has refined this theory. The current consensus suggests a multi-stage burial ritual. It's believed that the deceased were first placed inside the stone jars, perhaps with a lid, to undergo a period of initial decomposition. This is known as a primary burial. After the flesh had decayed, the bones would be retrieved, perhaps cremated, and then buried in a secondary location, often in smaller ceramic urns or pits dug into the ground surrounding the large stone jars. The megalithic jars, in this view, served as monumental tombstones or decomposition chambers for the elite members of this society. The few lids that have been discovered, often carved with figures of animals or humans, are thought to represent guardians for the deceased. It is a logical, evidence-based theory that paints a picture of a complex and ritualistic society honoring their dead in a truly monumental fashion. For many, this explanation is sufficient. It categorizes the jars, places them within a historical timeline, and provides them with a purpose we can understand.
But as with so many ancient mysteries, when you look closer, the comfortable explanation begins to fray at the edges. The funerary theory, while logical,
fails to account for a number of deeply puzzling anomalies that surround the plane of jars. First, there is the sheer, mind-boggling scale of the undertaking. We're talking about thousands of jars, many weighing several tons, spread across a vast geographical area. Geological analysis has confirmed that the jars were carved from stone quarried from locations often many kilometers away from where they now sit. The largest quarry, at a site known as Pukang, still bears the scars of this ancient industry. Here you can see half-finished jars still attached to the mother rock, abandoned in mid-production. We must ask ourselves, how did a so-called Iron Age culture, with supposedly simple tools, manage to carve these massive vessels with such precision? And more importantly, how did they transport them across miles of rugged, hilly terrain? The logistical challenge would be immense even with modern technology. The level of social organization, engineering skill, and sheer manpower required for this project is staggering and seems vastly disproportionate for the purpose of creating simple burial urns. Why not simply bury the dead in the ground? What was so important about this specific, incredibly difficult method? Then there is the issue of the contents. If the jars were indeed primary decomposition chambers, one would expect to find significant biological residue inside them, remains of human bodies, bone fragments, and the chemical signatures of decay. Yet very few human remains have ever been discovered inside the jars. The vast majority of burials are found around them. While it's possible that millennia of monsoon rains have washed the jars clean, the near total absence of internal burials is a significant challenge to the primary theory. And perhaps most compelling of all are the local legends. For the people who have lived on this plateau for generations, the jars are not tombs. The stories passed down through the centuries tell a completely different tale, one that is dismissed by mainstream academia as mere folklore. But in lands where written history is scarce, oral tradition often holds the memory of a deeper truth. The local legends speak not of burials and mourning, but of victory, celebration, and giants. Let us step away from the archaeological journals and into the world of myth. The most enduring legend of the Plain of Jars is the story of an ancient king named Kun Chung. He was said to be a mighty warrior, a giant among men, who led his army against a tyrannical enemy. After a long and arduous battle, Kun Chung emerged victorious, liberating the people of the plateau.
To celebrate this monumental victory, the legend says the king commanded the creation of the thousands of stone jars. But they were not for the dead, they were for a celebration of life. According to the story, these massive vessels were used to brew and store enormous quantities of a powerful rice wine, laulawi, for the king and his army to feast for weeks on end. In this light, the jars are transformed. They are not somber funerary urns, but colossal victory cups, symbols of joy and liberation. This single legend provides an explanation for their immense size and their cup-like shape, something the burial theory struggles to do. It speaks to a purpose that is grand, epic, and celebratory. Other theories venture even further into the realm of speculation. Could the jars have been designed to collect and store purified monsoon rainwater? Some researchers have noted their strategic placement in relation to the landscape, suggesting a sophisticated understanding of water management. In a land governed by the cycles of wet and dry seasons, a reliable source of pure water would have been immensely valuable, perhaps for spiritual as well as practical purposes. Still others have proposed more esoteric functions. What if the jars were not containers for anything physical, but were designed to harness or interact with some form of energy? Could they be resonating chambers, built to capture the acoustic frequencies of the landscape, or to interact with atmospheric electricity during the region's intense thunderstorms?
While there is no direct evidence for such claims, it is a thought that resonates with other megalithic mysteries around the world, where stone and sound seem to be inextricably linked. When we view the Plain of Jars not as an isolated oddity, but as part of a global pattern, its significance deepens. All across the world, from the stone circles of Europe to the Great Pyramids of Egypt and the giant heads of Easter Island, we find evidence of ancient cultures obsessed with shaping and moving massive stones. This is the global megalithic phenomenon. While the artistic styles and specific forms vary from culture to culture, the underlying theme is a testament to an incredible and perhaps shared technological and spiritual impulse. Could the enigmatic jar builders of Laos have been a Southeast Asian expression of this same global, lost civilization? Could their knowledge of stonework, engineering, and logistics have stemmed from a common ancestral source, a mother culture whose memory now survives only in stone monuments and myth? Perhaps the purpose of the jars will only be understood when we see them not as a local curiosity, but as one more chapter in the epic, unwritten history of our planet. And so we are left gazing out over a field of silent stone sentinels, caught between two worlds of explanation. One is the world of science and archaeology, which tells a story of ritual, death, and an Iron Age people honoring their dead. The other is the world of myth and mystery, which speaks of giant kings, epic feasts, and a purpose that transcends our modern understanding. Are we looking at the graveyard of a forgotten people or the victory cups of ancient giants? Is the truth buried in the soil around these monuments, or is it encoded in the legends that still echo through these hills? The Plain of Jars holds its secrets close, offering no easy answers, standing as a timeless monument to a past we have irrevocably lost. The mystery of who carved these jars and why remains etched in the stone itself. But as we look away from the earth and toward the sky, a new generation of technology is allowing us to pierce the veil of time, revealing secrets that have lain hidden for millennia, not in stone, but buried beneath the canopy of the world's densest jungles.
For millennia, our understanding of the ancient world has been a story told in fragments. It has been pieced together from broken pottery, wind-worn ruins, and the rare, almost miraculous survival of a buried tomb or a forgotten text. History was a puzzle with most of its pieces missing, and the field of archaeology was a patient, often frustrating search for those pieces, one shovelful of earth at a time. The past was a vast, dark ocean, and we were exploring it with a single flickering candle, celebrating the discovery of one small island in a sea of unknowns. We believed that the great voids on our historical maps, the endless green of the Amazon, the impenetrable jungles of Cambodia, the shifting sands of the Sahara, were empty for a reason. We assumed these environments were too hostile, too unforgiving to have supported anything more than small, scattered tribes. We saw them as barriers to civilization, not cradles of it. Our image of the ancient world was one of isolated points of light: Egypt, Mesopotamia, Rome, China, separated by vast oceans of wilderness and a deep abyss of time. But what if this image was entirely wrong? What if the darkness was not an absence of history, but simply a failure of our own perception? What if a sprawling, interconnected ancient world has been lying there all along, hidden in plain sight, waiting not for a shovel, but for a new way of seeing? Today, we stand at the dawn of a new age of discovery. We have forged a key, not of iron, but of light and energy, that allows us to unlock this unseen world. This is the story of how technology became a time machine, allowing us to witness the ghosts of lost empires and rewrite the story of our planet. The traditional path to discovery was one of grueling physical work. An archaeologist might spend a lifetime guided by a line in an ancient text or a local legend, hacking through dense jungle or mapping subtle contours in the desert sand in the hopes of finding a single buried wall. Success was measured in decades. A discovery often relied on a stroke of luck, a a farmer's plow hitting a stone foundation, a sinkhole opening to reveal a hidden chamber. This method, for all its romantic appeal, is profoundly limited. It is slow, it is destructive, as the act of digging up the past inevitably alters it. And most importantly, it is biased towards what is already partially visible. We found the ruins that were not completely swallowed by the earth, the pyramids that still defied the horizon. But what of the cities that were completely consumed by the jungle? The settlements buried under meters of volcanic ash or river silt? They remained lost, relegated to the realm of myth, their existence questioned and their scale unimaginable. The great library of the past was buried, and we were trying to read it through a keyhole. This was the accepted reality. The pace of discovery was slow, and our map of the ancient world would only ever grow by small incremental additions. We believed we had a rough outline of our collective story. We were wrong. The keyhole was about to be replaced by a panoramic window.
The revolution began not on the ground, but from the air. It began with a technology called LI-DAR, light detection and ranging. Imagine an aircraft flying over a dense, triple-canopy jungle. It fires billions of laser pulses towards the ground every second. Most of these pulses hit leaves and branches and bounce back. But a fraction of them find a path through the foliage, striking the forest floor before returning to the sensor. By measuring the infinitesimally small time difference between these returning signals, a supercomputer can meticulously filter out every tree, every bush, every leaf, and render a perfect three-dimensional topographical map of the bare earth beneath. It is, for all intents and purposes, a way to digitally deforest the entire planet. And when the digital trees fell, the world was stunned. In 2018, researchers flew LIDAR over the Petén jungle of northern Guatemala, the heartland of the ancient Maya. For decades, archaeologists had worked there, painstakingly mapping isolated city-states like Tikal. They believed the Maya lived in relatively compact urban centers, separated by sparsely populated jungle. LIDAR revealed this to be a staggering miscalculation. When the data came in, it showed not a few scattered cities, but a sprawling, interconnected megalopolis. Over 60,000 previously unknown structures were revealed. Houses, palaces, defensive fortifications, and towering pyramids emerged from the digital soil. Most astonishingly, the landscape was crisscrossed by a vast network of raised causeways, ancient superhighways that connected cities and allowed for trade and travel on a massive scale. The Maya weren't living in the jungle. They had engineered it. They had drained swamps, built terraces, and managed forests to support a population of 10 to 15 million people, a density comparable to modern-day Europe, in an area long thought to be uninhabitable. It was one of the single largest discoveries in the history of archaeology, and it happened in a matter of weeks. The same story repeated itself halfway across the world in Cambodia. The great temple of Angkor Wat was believed to be a singular, spectacular religious center surrounded by a modest city. LIDAR flights organized by the Khmer Archaeology Project peeled back the jungle and revealed the truth. Angkor was not a temple with a city, it was the dense urban core of the largest pre-industrial empire on Earth. The data showed a grid of streets, canals, and reservoirs stretching for hundreds of square kilometers. And hidden deeper in the mountains, the technology found something that had been the stuff of legend for centuries: the lost city of Mahendraparvata, the first capital of the Khmer Empire, its layout revealed for the first time in over 1,000 years. But LIDAR can only see the surface. To peer into the Earth itself, another tool was needed. Ground-penetrating radar, or GPR, works by sending radio waves into the soil. These waves bounce off buried objects, a stone wall, a void, a compacted floor, and return to a receiver, allowing archaeologists to create a detailed map of what lies beneath without ever breaking ground. In 2020, a team of scientists used GPR to achieve something unprecedented. They towed advanced radar arrays over 75 acres of fields near Rome and mapped an entire buried Roman city. The city of Fileri Novi, swallowed by time, was revealed in its entirety. They could see not just the outlines of buildings, but the plumbing beneath them. They located a sprawling bath complex, a market, multiple temples, and a unique public monument of a type never seen before. It was a complete blueprint of a Roman city captured in ghostly detail, a digital excavation that was entirely non-invasive. GPR is the tool that is currently being used in the search for hidden chambers behind the walls of Tutankhamun's tomb and to map the unseen voids that may lie beneath the paws of the Great Sphinx. It is our eye into the underworld, the silent spaces where the secrets of the past still sleep.
From the sky and from just above the ground, our view was transformed. But the final piece of this technological trinity came from even higher. Satellite archaeology, pioneered by researchers like Dr. Sarah Parchak, uses high-resolution imagery from space. Satellites equipped with infrared and multispectral sensors can detect subtle variations in the Earth that are invisible to the naked eye. A buried stone wall, for instance, retains moisture differently than the surrounding soil, creating a minute temperature difference that an infrared camera in orbit can see. A buried mud brick structure will affect the health of the vegetation growing above it, a spectral signature that a satellite can detect. Using this technique, Parchak and her team identified more than 17 potential lost pyramids in Egypt, along with over 1,000 forgotten tombs and 3,000 ancient settlements. They scanned the Nile Delta and saw the ghostly outlines of the ancient city of Tanis, its streets and houses laid bare from an altitude of 700 kilometers. This is the ultimate treasure map, a guide to the future of discovery drawn by eyes in the heavens. The implications of this technological convergence are profound. It is not just that we are finding more sites, we are being forced to completely reevaluate the nature of the ancient world. The long-held image of a sparsely populated planet, with civilization as a rare exception, is being shattered. These new tools reveal a world that was teeming with people, filled with vast cities, and connected by complex infrastructure. The Amazon was not a virgin wilderness. It was a carefully managed garden, home to millions. The Cambodian jungle was not an impenetrable barrier. It was the heart of a sprawling hydraulic empire. The scale of ancient engineering is proving to be orders of magnitude greater than previously thought possible. The societies we once dismissed as primitive possessed a sophisticated understanding of urban planning, hydrology, and agriculture that rivaled that of the Romans. This isn't just adding new pages to our history books, it's forcing us to throw out the old editions and start from scratch. The data is clear. Our ancestors were more numerous, more advanced, and more impactful on their environment than we ever dared to imagine. This is where the story connects back to the grander, overarching mystery of a lost human history. For decades, researchers who spoke of a highly advanced global ancient civilization were dismissed. Their evidence was anecdotal, their claims untestable. But now these revolutionary technologies are providing a new and powerful line of evidence. They are proving, on a global scale, that the foundations of our history are far more extensive and sophisticated than we were taught. We are for the first time seeing the true scope of the human project on this planet. We are finding that everywhere we thought there was nothing, there was in fact something incredible. These digital discoveries are the confirmation that our planet is littered with the ruins of forgotten worlds. If we have found sprawling megalopolises and thousands of lost settlements in just the last 15 years, what else is out there, waiting for this revealing light to pass over it? What lies beneath the ice of Antarctica, under the shallow seas of the Caribbean, or buried beneath the sands of deserts we have not yet thought to scan? We have equipped ourselves with new senses, new eyes that can see through the veil of time. LI-DAR, GPR, and satellite imaging are not just tools, they are engines of revelation, proving that the world of our ancestors was infinitely richer and more complex than the fragmented record of traditional archaeology ever allowed us to believe.
We stand on the precipice of a golden age of discovery, where the true, sprawling map of our ancient world might finally be revealed. The digital ghosts, summoned from the Earth by light and radio waves, are shouting a single, undeniable truth: we have profoundly underestimated our own past. They force us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about the scale and sophistication of our ancestors. We have unearthed temples that predate history, peered into subterranean cities built to escape an unknown terror, and stood on plains covered in the enigmatic jars of giants. The evidence is overwhelming. Our history is not a simple linear story. It is a collection of forgotten epics. The question that remains is, what does this rewritten past tell us about who we truly are?
Our journey is coming to an end. We have traveled across continents and through millennia, venturing deep into the earth and high above the clouds, all in search of a history that has been forgotten. We began with a single profound question: what if the story we've been told about our past is only the beginning? Now, standing at the end of this exploration, we must confront an even more startling possibility. What if it is not even the correct story at all? We have walked the 12,000-year-old plazas of Göbekli Tepe, a site that single-handedly pushes back the dawn of civilization into the mists of the last ice age. We have felt the chill of the abyss in the subterranean empire of Derinkuyu, a city built for survival against a threat so terrible it drove thousands to abandon the sun. We have navigated the unnerving, silent perfection of the Longyu Grottos in China, a monumental undertaking that exists without a single mention in any historical text, a project of impossible scale and utter anonymity. We have descended into the Ravna tunnels of Bosnia, a labyrinth filled with anomalous energies and megalithic artifacts that hint at a lost European civilization and a forgotten understanding of physics. We have stood on the highlands of Laos, amidst a field of colossal stone jars, caught between the explanations of archaeology and the epic legends of giants. And finally, we have seen the digital ghosts of lost empires summoned from beneath the jungle canopy and the desert sands, revealed by technologies that are showing us, for the first time, the true, sprawling map of the ancient world. Individually, each of these sites is a profound mystery, but when viewed together, they are something more. They are a pattern, a collection of irrefutable data points that form a constellation of anomaly against the dark backdrop of accepted history. This is the pattern that emerges when we dare to connect the dots. It is a pattern of impossible antiquity. Again and again, we find sophisticated structures and ideas appearing thousands of years before they should. The astronomical alignments and intricate carvings of Göbekli Tepe were not the work of simple hunter-gatherers. They were the work of astronomers and engineers, a society with a deep established cosmology at a time when humanity was supposed to be living in caves. It is a pattern of monumental engineering. The sheer scale of these projects challenges the very foundations of our belief about ancient capabilities. The removal of 1 million cubic meters of rock to create the Longyu Grottos, the transport of multi-ton jars across the Laotian highlands, the construction of vast, interconnected cities hidden in the Amazon. These are not the achievements of small regional tribes. They are the legacy of powerful, highly organized civilizations with a mastery of logistics and stonework that, in some cases, we would be hard-pressed to replicate today. It is also a pattern that hints at a lost science. In the tunnels of Bosnia, we hear whispers of energy fields and healing frequencies. In the precise layouts of megalithic sites, we see a deep understanding of acoustics, geology, and the celestial movements. It raises the question of whether our ancestors were working with a different paradigm of science, one that was perhaps more attuned to the subtle energies of the planet itself, a science that our own materialist worldview has forgotten how to see.
And finally, it is a pattern of cataclysm and concealment. Göbekli Tepe was deliberately and painstakingly buried. The Ravne tunnels were methodically sealed. A great forgetting seems to have occurred, a historical amnesia that erased entire empires from our records. It suggests that our history is not a smooth, linear ascent from primitive to modern, but a violent, cyclical story of incredible heights and devastating falls. Why does this matter? Why challenge a historical narrative that has been accepted for generations? Because the story we tell ourselves about our past defines the limits of our future. If we believe we are the descendants of primitive, superstitious cave dwellers who slowly and clumsily stumbled towards civilization, we see ourselves as the absolute pinnacle of human achievement. All of history was a slow, inevitable climb to us. But if we accept the evidence of this deeper, more complex past, that self-aggrandizing image shatters. The story becomes one of cycles, of great ages of light and knowledge, followed by dark ages of forgetting. It suggests that humanity has reached incredible heights before and has fallen from them. We are not the pinnacle. We are the survivors, the inheritors of a fractured legacy, living amongst the ruins of a world far grander than our own, a world we no longer remember. This rewritten history offers us a more humbling, but also a more inspiring vision of ourselves. It means the genius of our ancestors was not inferior to our own, merely different. It means the potential for greatness, for monumental achievement, and for profound wisdom is woven into the very fabric of the human spirit. It is our birthright. We have simply forgotten how to access it. Looking into the past is like looking into a fractured mirror. In the broken pieces, we see glimpses of a forgotten face, a reflection of a potential that is still ours, waiting to be reclaimed. The guardians of the established narrative will, of course, resist this conclusion. They will label these sites as isolated anomalies, misinterpretations, or the stuff of fantasy. They will demand more evidence, a standard of proof that is often impossible to meet when dealing with the ravages of deep time. But true science is not about defending a dogma. It is about following the evidence, especially when it leads to uncomfortable places. The evidence no longer suggests that the old map of history is merely missing a few details. It suggests that the map itself is wrong and must be redrawn.
We are living in the most exciting era of discovery in human history. The technologies we now possess are allowing us to become the first generation to systematically search for our own lost chapters. We are no longer limited by what we can dig. We can see through the earth, through the oceans, and through the jungles. The entire planet has become an archaeological site, and we are just beginning the search. This raises the final, ultimate questions. What other wonders lie waiting for us, sealed in the silence of the earth? What great cities lie frozen beneath the Antarctic ice sheet? What other pyramids lie hidden, cloaked as mountains? What was the great cataclysm, the global event that shattered the mirror of our past and plunged us into a collective amnesia? Was it a flood, a comet impact, a pole shift? Are we As the ancients themselves insisted in their myths, a species with a forgotten memory, slowly and painfully waking up to the truth of who we once were? The Earth is not a dead thing. It is a library, a vast and ancient repository of stories. For too long, we have been content to read only the introductory chapter. We have mistaken the preface for the entire book, but the full story is there, written in stone and shadow, in energy and echo. It is the epic of our own species, a story far older, stranger, and more magnificent than we have ever been told. The evidence is clear. We are the inheritors of a world veiled in mystery, a world that was home to lost races, forgotten sciences, and epic histories that have faded into legend. But they are not gone. They are simply waiting. The greatest discoveries are not behind us. They lie ahead, in the unexcavated ruins and the unscanned landscapes. The quest for our past is the most important adventure we will ever undertake, because in finding the truth of our origins, we will ultimately discover the truth of ourselves. The past is not dead. It is not even past. It is simply buried, and it is waiting to be found.